With the absence of the Pharaoh in Britannia, Isca fell into the hands of the natives once more. Not for long though, as Ptolemy pressed his men hard to reach the brutal island. With a decisive strike, the town was ours again. A false hope for the Celts perhaps. Alexander Scalia had also just completed his conquest of one of the Belgae tribes in northern Gaul. On his travels back, he acquired some of the most elite spearmen available to assist him in his own expedition into Britannia, alongside the Pharaoh. So was the plan at least, and just as we had successfully completed one strategic move, similar in the south, which we did by bribing the Lusitani. And as that was done, we now send our army to follow this new Carthaginian legion instead, on its way towards the Alps. We require loads more men to even think about crossing swords with the Romans, but thanks to the barracks we constructed during the early times of our colony, proper warriors aren't too hard to come by. Besides, we laying siege to terrace in the southern part of their land to lure the Romans away from the front lines. Just like the ones in the east, where Ptolemy and his son both were ready to deal the final blow to the Mauryan's western regions. After our swift conquest of Harmosea, all that remained was Pura. And to spare you the trouble of this torturous ending they suffered, we only harassed and assisted in the final blow, allowing our new backgen allies to take it as a sign of good faith. In the meantime, these many armies of ours weren't really needed out here, so they were sent to Anatolia, where they will prepare for the upcoming war against the other armies on their way there too. These eastern provinces even made us so damn rich in terms of gold and food, we could afford to develop the Gallic provinces even further. The Court of Alexander was finally formed. The long and tedious organization period was over, meaning we now had what we required to construct that last temple that will become a wonder of sorts too, just like the pyramids and the rest. Obviously, with all these restored wonders throughout our realm, we had to research annual surveys next. It is the last piece we need to complete our entire philosophy line, which by the way is insane. Our new Persian provinces also received new governors after our conquest of these lands filled with wonders. However, we were kinda running low on qualified men to fill our positions. Thankfully, our impressive dynasty was filled with unmarried women to seek a spouse qualified enough to lead an army or become another governor. Oh, and now that we are here, just take a moment to admire this brilliant family tree. The last governor was employed to administrate Isca. Oh boy, I would hate to marry into the most powerful family in the world, just to be stationed at the farthest away province with the worst weather imaginable, and our most warlike enemies. Despite us wanting to invest some of our gold into infrastructure in Antioch, we realized it was actually possible to begin the construction of the final wing of our library in Alexandria. It requires us to delay all the projects in Syria, but I think it is worth it. What's the worst thing that could happen, right? A fire? Nah. We did also send out our second fleet to blockade Genoa after the Carthaginians lost it. But as the Romans were idiots, they tried to use the nimble transports to break it. It did mean, however, that we now accidentally came into possession of the port, which I promise you wasn't part of our master plan. For this exact reason, we gave our Achilles fleet new orders to sail over there and defend this new land, just in case anything happened. Furthermore, although our only goal is to conquer all the known wonders in the world, we were also surprisingly close to scoring an economic victory. All we truly needed was a few more specific provinces, the amber resource from Germania, and a few more men. I mean, most of these provinces required were in Anatolia, so this seems quite feasible too. Not that it really changes anything for us, but it is still kinda hilarious. Our intention to send the Achilles fleet to Genoa was justified, but too slow as Rome easily captured it back. And now, with these 3 armies roaming the region itself, any progress seemed almost impossible. Yet it didn't change the plans for our Carthaginian allies, who continued to push forward. Understanding joining arms with them is our only hope to defeating these large numbers, we had to follow. We required a few more mercenaries, despite knowing this is a foolish idea and the only way out of this is by going to the underworld. But surprisingly enough, they didn't attack, and with Carthage keeping on sending more reinforcements this way, we might actually stand a chance. But what is kind of bad though is the fact that the Armenians, our client state, have chosen to ally with the Rhodians and Pergamonians, both of which are obviously part of that Hellenic League from Anatolia, our target. Fucking bastards. At sea though, our Odysseus fleet would still hold their own, as they skillfully sliced through the Roman transports. They just can't get rid of us, no matter how hard they try. We did lose a small number of marines, and as our economy was so impressive, we felt no problem in mustering several new ships. In Britannia, our second army had made landfall. It was still rather depleted, whereas the Pharaoh already had marched eagerly into the unknown lands, where he suffered heavily from the weather, and thus needed a distraction from the nearby Celtic armies. We still had a few things to attend to in the eastern provinces, in an effort to avoid rebellions and cultural difficulties once we leave with all our armies, because as soon as the inevitable confrontation with the Hellenic League begins, throwing away any armies will be impossible. Our military support for the Carthaginians paid off, as they went in and captured Genoa. I have no official count on how many times this specific port has changed hands, but I'm sure it is more than any other in the world. After a long tiresome march from Persia, Junior finally reached our military base in Demetrius. On his way up here, he had already disbanded most of his insignificant units with the sole purpose to muster some more impressive warriors here. We spent some extra time to carefully consider our composition. Overall, we chose to keep all our Ethiopian units, as they have fought valiantly since Junior took command. Other than that, we decreased our numbers of pikes in favor of some close-quarter swordsmen to outflank the Hellenic hoplites, a more diverse cavalry roster for more flexibility, a few reserve spearmen, and of course, Syrian elephants. But now it is time for the main man to make his move. We couldn't wait any longer. Bretagne was vulnerable and the Pharaoh was positive his immense experience could secure him a victory. We made a combined attack from both the north and the south, but the Brits were ready. Not wanting to give the enemy a forced advantage due to our pikes performing better in the open, we chose this awkward angle to approach. We quickly sent our scouts forward to grant us a bit of vision. Here we discovered both the British tribes we were at war with had grouped up to face us in front of the town. As they had a clear numbers advantage, we chose to use our archers to lower their manpower, so our men had a greater fighting chance. Nevertheless, it was to no success. They just kept trying to outflank us by using the nearby forest as cover. If we were to have any chance, our warriors had to contest it. Entering the forest was a huge mistake, as we basically gave over our advantage to them. With all our supporting warriors isolated and engaged inside the forest, the main Greek and Egyptian corps was left vulnerable. The struggle was dragged out and exhausting, even for the great Pharaoh himself and his bodyguards. He lost so many, all he could do was rout off the field. He left his men to die that day. It caused his so loyal pikemen to slowly waver and break off from their formation, allowing the Celts to envelop us even further. Our expedition into the cold and rainy landscape had backfired. How the Pharaoh managed to survive with just 2 other bodyguards is a miracle in itself. He fled as far back into Allied territory as possible, while the siege of Camalodunum was lifted. With this devastating loss and the fact that the Pharaoh abandoned his men during the battle, the remaining soldiers who once were loyal veterans of his refused to march any further and demanded to return home to their families in Egypt. It was a demand we couldn't refuse without causing a mutiny. Our Britannic campaign is over. However, that wasn't the case in Cisalpine, where we slowly began to creep forward into the Italic homeland. The Romans did possess an army of highly trained fighters and scorpions, so we must be careful. Luckily, it is a bit easier when you have one less enemy to worry about. The Roman ships that we recently witnessed outside the coast of Sicily have disappeared, and as we didn't want to search all night for them, we instantly made our Achilles fleet sail for Ephesus for the upcoming war. To our surprise, we will receive support from the Macedonians, who have gone into a ferocious conflict with the Hellenic League beyond the pond. Cyzicus is heavily fortified though, so it will be challenging for the rulers of Pella. The Roman legions in the north had grown massively. We desperately outnumbered and in dire need of a decisive victory. The thing is, the only proper isolated army is fortified on the other side of a river, with town reinforcements to back them up. But as a matter of fact, there was yet another army hidden in the fog of war, which revealed itself. Well aware this was a doomed fight, our inexperienced commander withdrew. However, after hearing the Carthaginians chose to stand and fight like honorable men, we knew what we had to do. Luckily for us, the Romans foolishly chose to attack from 2 opposite sides, and not as a united army. This meant Carthage and us were able to outnumber the first army 2 to 1. Our superior infantry pinned down the Romans while their elite elephants smashed into their rear. Once that was dealt with, the Carthaginians immediately went on to hinder the second army from burning the Punic supplies inside the fortification. But as we wrapped up the last few units from the first army, we were able to support the Carthaginians again, making this an exceptional show of coordination between our 2 different nations. Can you believe we were once at the brink of war with Carthage? How times have changed. Now we stand united, having smashed 2 Roman armies. To our pleasure, this must have been what inspired the Iberian tribes to rally to our cause. As mentioned, we skipped over the fall of Moria. To be honest, they really stood no chance with Philopater here. Nevertheless, he now had a long march ahead of him. He may or may not be part of the initial attack. I mean, if he can make it back before the Pharaoh has reinstated his army, then maybe he will make it. Ptolemy had returned home and will begin mustering a new army here at Demetrius, just like Junior did. You know, the kind of army with sacred squadrons, elephants, swords, spears, Cretan archers, and more. We were all but ready to fight. After the battle at Arretium, the army morale was higher than ever. But we had to press on. So we chose to sabotage the supplies of one of the Roman armies in order for us to continue our defeat in detail strategy. But somehow they actually didn't work. The legions of Rome are truly impressive. So we chose to fall back and prepare alongside the Carthaginians, with our fleet just outside the coast to supply us for the upcoming war.